All right, kind of the part two. Normally I do the way I like to do it because I'm just busy and I don't have time to spend a couple hours consecutively working on it. It's just go through, do everything, finish the speakers, and then review my work. But I said I'd try to do one of these videos where I just do it piece by piece. But anyway, part two, got the cabinets on the operating table here. We're going to start bracing and gluing, and I took a bunch of scrap wood. Bracing doesn't have to be anything particular, just whatever, scrap wood, and cut it to the length you need. Nobody will ever see it. It just has to be rigid enough to run inside the cabinet to brace the cabinet, nothing crazy. And then I also found some old pieces of plywood that I can use for a crossover board. So this one actually was used as a crossover once before. I don't remember in what speaker or what, but it'll work. And then typical Elmer's glue, and then even for some spots I'll use the tubes of this liquid nail. And this one already measured for my length and got all my braces placed inside. I haven't glued any of them yet. I'm not going to glue them on camera. I don't care if you want to watch me glue stuff. I'm not going to glue them on camera. I just put them in place so you can see where they're going to be, and then I will go back and glue them all. And you can see, if I can get backed out here, there's going to be one down here that is going to run along the baseboard. And then there's another one right here, bracing below the woofer. And then there's one on each side here and here. You can see them in there, kind of. And then that one on the bottom. Let me grab a flashlight. Whoop. There's the one on the bottom, down there. You need to get him glued in. And then apparently one on each side of the woofer. These are going to be glued to the side walls, so front to back and on the side, so it's will help. And then another one right here between where the mid and woofer are to brace this span. And then there'll be another one right there between the woofer and tweeter to give this front panel. It's large and it's got a bunch of holes cut in it, so it's not going to be very rigid. So I wanted to put plenty of bracing to keep this panel from wanting to vibrate and flex with that 10-inch woofer. And then on each side here and here, you can see them there. There's another brace on each side that, will be glued to the front and the back and the wall. And then I may even do, I haven't put it in there yet, but I may even do another one up here at the top that will run along this top board. Not as much of a big deal because this span, these speakers aren't very deep. So as they are wide, these boards are very, big, but these end caps really aren't that big, so they shouldn't suffer cabinet resonance or whatever too much. But if I want to get all my main bracing in, and if I have some extra boards, I'll put them up top, because with the last couple sets of speakers I've done in these, I've actually been chopping through quite a bit of my smaller scrap wood. I might have to run to Menards or something, and you can get sticks of like these. I think this is a 1x2 or something. You can get sticks of this at Menards for I think it's like $1 or $1.39 for a 4-foot stick. It's really cheap. And then, what else? Oh, yep, and then got to glue up all the seams. You can see they put a lot of glue on these, but it doesn't really look like a wood glue. I pulled a bunch of it out because there was just tons of it in there. It's really stringy. To me, it just looks like obviously more like a hot glue, and I know there's different types of hot glue, but just taking the putty knife inside, I was able to just scrape a lot of it right off. It was also adhering a lot like hot glue. It sticks good till it don't. And then I don't know, I think you could maybe see some back there on the bottom of these. There was a lot. I scraped a lot of it out. You can see it kind of dripping from the top there along the bottom. There's a lot of glue, but apparently, like everything else on these kind of speakers, everything was just cheap, even the glue. That's why, even though they have just glue gobbed on them everywhere inside, they're still coming apart. Maybe they should have just used actual, like, good wood glue. Maybe they wouldn't have come apart. But the other problem with the corners all being filled with tons of glue, putting the new glue on, I'm going to have to glue. I tried picking some of this out, and you can see I picked it out here. Anywhere there's a brace, I had to scrape it out, or hold on, let me pull a brace out. Kind of cut the edges of the brace back, the corners here, because of that glue in the corner. It wouldn't let the brace get uptight to the wall. And instead of picking all the glue off all the corners, the old glue is just easier to kind of notch the corners of the brace boards. But yeah, I can glue over that and see how it holds. If not, I'll just I can use more like the liquid nail and glue over it. And then if even then, I have a bunch of these little corner pieces left over. Even when I cut off corners from other stuff, I don't typically throw them away, because these corners can be nice to have around if you're trying to glue things together like this. You can just put glue on it and put it in the corner there to bond those two corners, which I'm sure anyone that does woodworking is already way ahead of me. But that's just another way. And then the other solution I'm going to have to try is on the back of the speakers here. I'm going to run glue around the edge, because you can see here there's a gap. I'm going to fill that in with some wood glue all the way around, and that should help a little bit. And then all the gluing on the inside joints, and then even gluing in all the bracing, since it will help attach the front board to the back board, and then that will help kind of hold everything together. But even then, all these corners have to be glued together, because with a 10-inch woofer in here, if you crank it up too much, you'd be surprised how how hard it is to keep a large cabinet from vibrating with a large woofer in it. It has to be usually braced and glued very well. So that's the next step. And then probably the next video, part 3 possibly, I'll get all the parts put on these boards, glued on these boards and wired up. And the original terminals will be back in these holes just to fill the hole, because I don't want to have to create something to plug this hole, because I'm going to switch these over to 5-way binding post. But the spring terminals will still be there to plug this hole. They just won't they won't connect anything. I forgot to mention in the initial video, found it kind of surprising, these are made in the USA back in the 90s. A lot of these speakers were actually made in China. I'm not sure. Sony must have found a factory or something that could do it for cheap in the USA. So a Japanese company had their cheap speakers made in the USA, while USA companies were having their cheap speakers made in China and Japan. So it's funny how some of that stuff works out. But yep, better get gluing. We'll get it all glued, and we'll be on to the next video. Alright guys, 2 days later now, got all the braces in and glued. I put them in, glued them, waited for the glue to dry so they would stay in place, and then I stood them up and grabbed the light, glued around them on all sides, and also use some liquid nail. The glue is a little more see-through, but you can see the liquid nail on there. The glue, in some instances, as you can see, was running a lot. And to fill some of the bigger gaps, liquid nail always works really well. It's much thicker, more pasty, and it's extremely sticky. We'll go up inside here so you can see. Yeah, there's some side braces up there. There's the brace between the woofer and the mid. Another side brace. I decided not to do a brace on the top. There is a brace, obviously, between the mid and the tweeter. I wanted to brace the front board as much as possible, because you have this very large board and then 3 holes cut in it. So This one, the front board and the back board being the largest as far as like width. We're going to need a lot of bracing. Fortunately, these speakers aren't very deep, so the sideboards aren't that big, but I still put the side braces here, one on each side of the woofer. And then the one, one here and here, here. And then obviously one right here. This was a very weak spot. This spot was very hollow sounding before that brace was there. And then another brace about here, another brace about here, and then there's another one here running along that bottom board. Get down in there, you can see it. Ooh, somewhere. There it is down there. So, yep, that one's glued well. So yeah, got all the braces glued in, and then on the back side of them, I went along this, if I can get out of the light here, went along this seam, because this back, the sideboards, I think all the boards on this are 1/2 inch thick, just chipboard. It's like, as you can see, it's not even, these kind of speakers, it's not even MDF, it's just the cheapest chipboard, particle board, whatever. But the back panel is inset or whatever they call it, where it's routed out and then it sits inside and you just have this thin edge. So I went around the whole edge with wood glue, as you can see, to help secure that. And then, also obviously glued them on the inside. The wood glue's not showing up. You can kind of see the yellow. There's a bit of a pea stain around that stuff, but glued them inside and out. So hopefully they just having that brace that's actually right here, they are so much more solid now than they were. Way more, even on the sides. Just adding that board right there. I know you could add a lot more bracing, and like I said, you start going to town with the bracing, you start to displace cabinet volume, which can affect your response. And the woofers I'm putting in these, since they're going to be sealed, I want to keep my cabinet volume closer to 2 cubic feet. I don't remember exactly. It's a little larger than they need, but it's going to give me, I think, a bit of a peak at the bottom. I'm not 100% sure. I got to get the woofers in there and then measure them. Because I can do all the calculations and run it through Basebox, and it'll spit out, a graph or whatever. But until I actually put the woofer in there and do some measurements, who knows for sure. And then, because we're not going to use these anymore, as you can see, there's the terminal. I removed the crossover from the terminal, basically 2 little capacitors. So this terminal will remain here, basically just to plug the hole, but it will not hook to anything. I will probably put a little label here saying do not use, because we're going to use these now. Put in some cheap basic binding posts. We're going to use some banana plugs, and no specific method. I just basically set this board here when those weren't on there, and just eyeballed 2 holes because they're on the back and nobody's going to see them, so it's not like they need to be measured precisely. They just need to be roughly in the middle, roughly near the bottom. I don't know why they put these way the hell up here. Maybe just for easier, so when you crawl behind, your 30, 40-year-old guy and you're trying to hook this up, you don't want to be all the way down here by the floor. Up here, it's a little easier to get to, I guess. Well, which is understandable for spring terminals, because sometimes they can be a pain in the butt. But with banana plugs, it doesn't really matter. They're easy. You just reach behind, plug them in, you're done. So we are on to phase 3, which the next part 3, phase 3, whatever, will be sticking the crossovers together. So stay tuned, and when I get some time, I'll get to that.